the repository class is to to RM8, how to update a course, how to delete a course, right? Similarly, user control has okay, cool. So here we have been given some kind of project. Okay, let me take you through this project. What all things are there? So this project is basically a very simple project, nothing much over here, right? It's a Spring Boot project. First of all, why? How can I say that? Because of this annotation on the main class. It says add the Spring Boot application, which basically denotes that I want to run this with the help of Spring Boot. Okay. Now let's look at what all classes it has. So it has basically two entities, course and user. Each of them have certain fields. Okay, course has ID, username, password. Course has a ID, name, description, status, username, and user has ID, username, password. Right. So these two entities are there. Don't worry about or cram all these fields. All you need to know is that yes, course has certain fields, user has certain fields. That's it. Okay, that's it for now, right? Then corresponding to these, you have user controller and course controller. Now, what are these course controller and user controller? They contain the APIs related to course and So it's the main.
Hello.
Right.
Yeah, I was just saying that doesn't it change the port number by default? Because like I come from Next.js background, it does change. Like if a port is busy, so it does change the port number by default. Doesn't it happen in like Spring Boot and other things?
This doesn't happen in Spring Boot.
But like if you're like working on a lot of applications, so we have to keep it. In mind, like that this port we are using in this application and all, right?
Generally, Java is deployed on a single machine. Your Java service will be deployed on independent machines. Okay? So one machine will generally have a single Java instance on it, and that's why this option does not come. This problem doesn't. While talking about Next.js, okay, or some other languages, like those have smaller processes. Okay, Next.js itself is you can have very lightweight processes on it. Right, on a single machine you can have multiple. Okay, again, till session number 2. Let me paste the command over here. Okay, so it's ready now. Now I'll just go ahead and open it. I'll open folder, user workspace. Please open this ME Spring Boot debugging. Inside this, you can open exercise number 1. Okay. Cool. So here we have been given some kind of project. Okay, let me take you through this project. What all things are there? So this project is basically a very simple project. Nothing much over here. Right. It's a Spring Boot project. First of all, why? How can I say that? Because of this annotation on my main class. It says @Spring Boot application, which basically denotes that I want to run this with the help of Spring Boot. Okay. Now let's look at what all classes it has. So it has basically 2 entities, course and user. Each of them have certain fields. Okay, course has ID, username, password. Course has a ID, name, description, status, username, and user has ID, username, password. Right. So these 2 entities are there. Don't worry about cram all these fields. All you need to know is that yes, course has certain fields, user has certain fields. That's it. Okay, that's it for now. Right. Then corresponding to these, you have user controller and course controller. Now, what are these course controller and user controller? They contain the APIs related to course and user respectively. Okay. So course controller contains the APIs related to course. For example, how to add a course, how to get a course, right? How to update a course, how to delete a course, right? Similarly, user control has APIs for how to log in with the help of the user. How can the user log in with the help of username, password? Okay. How can we create a new user? Things like that. Right. Then you have service classes corresponding to this course and the user. Okay. Again, what's the role of a course service? It basically contains what's the role of a service class? It will basically contain the business logic, right? If you have any business logic, then it will contain the business logic. Otherwise, it will just call the repository layer and give you the appropriate response, right? This is the structure that we have been following. Okay, so this is the controller. So all applications have 3 layers: controller, service layer, and the repository layer, right? Controller is the one that receives the API. It has all the mappings. Then controller passes it on to service layer. Service layer calls repository layer, and repository layer calls DB. Right. Same thing we have kept over here. Right. So So core service is there. If you see core service, what it's doing, it's basically just calling the core repository, right? And what is happening inside core repository? Well, here we are using at the repository, and here we are using Spring Boot, Spring Data. Okay, we'll have a look at this, that how this works in the upcoming week, in the next week. But for now, you can assume that this will just go ahead and read it from the DB, right? If you see, it's extending this JPA repository. Okay, just by extending this JPA repository, you will it will automatically go ahead and add the implementation. Okay, and you will be able to fetch from DB. Right? But let's not jump into details of this one. We already have this covered in the upcoming sessions. Okay. For now, I hope the layering of this project is clear to everyone. Any doubts in this, anyone? It's just a simple project, 2 entities and then controller repository service for each of those. Right. Please go through this once. If you have any doubts, then let me know. Take a minute. Any doubts, anyone, in the project structure? I hope it's clear to everyone. Okay, let's move ahead then. Okay, so the objective of okay, Naveen is asking what is repository doing exactly. It's connecting to DB. Naveen, the role of the repository class is to fetch details from the DB or save details to the DB. Basically, all the things that are related to updating or reading from the DB, that is done by the repository. Okay, so it's the main, you can say main phase of your application towards DB. Right. How it actually works, how it's able to fetch from the DB, which DB it's using, all those things will come later. So that's why I don't want to go into details. So it's handling DB operations exactly now, correct? All the DB operations it's handling. Cool, then let's go ahead. The objective of this entire project is not for you to understand this project. Okay, of course you already know about controller, repository, services, entities, all these things, right? You know that how your projects are structured, right? And there's nothing too fancy about this one, right? But why do we want to, why do we have this project? Because there's something wrong in this project. Okay, let's try to run this and see what exactly is wrong. Okay. So then it's not working. I think I might have to reset my workspace. Just give me a minute. Meanwhile, you folks, if your workspace is working and if you are able to run the application, then please go ahead and let me know what kind of error, or if you're facing any kind of error, or did it run fine for you. I hope this works now. See. Sometimes it takes time to build. Yes, now I'll be able to run. Let's try to run this and see what happens. Okay, so now we are seeing some kind of error. Okay, can you just go through this error and maybe let me know that what exact issue is there and how can we resolve it? Any ideas? Just go through these error logs. Port is already in use, Vivek says, and Naveen says we should change the port. I think some server is using it, which both of you are correct. Okay, so port is already in use. So what happened over here? So everything is being printed over here, right? If you see, it says port 8080 was already in use. Okay, this means that we were trying to run our application on port number 8080. Okay, but it's already in use. Some other process is using it. Right. Now what you can do? So ideally you have two options. One option is that either you kill the process that is running on port number 8080. Okay, you kill that process, you stop that process. The other option is that you run on some different port. Okay, very simple two options. Right. Since killing the process that is running on port number 8080, that is not the most ideal solution because that might be an important process. Okay, that's why what we are going to do is we are going to move to a different port. Okay, we are going to move our application to a different port. Okay, now how to do that? Okay, how can we make our application run on a different port? Well, there is one property application which you can just mention in this resources application.properties. Okay, now why is this application.properties file used? This application.properties is used to add certain config. Okay, I remember in the first session we discussed that what Spring Boot does is it basically picks up certain configurations and then picks up certain POJOs, and then it basically pushes all of them to application context. Right. Just to jog your memory, let me open that particular diagram. Yes. So we see this one configuration metadata and then POJOs. Both of them are going inside what? Your Spring container. Right. Okay. So this is that configuration metadata that we are talking about. Okay. This application.properties is an example of this configuration metadata. So if I add certain properties over here, these properties will go and set an application context. It will be read and understood by your string. Right. So let's add the property. Okay. For changing for keeping a different port, we have this property called server.port. equals to 8081. Let's set it to 8081. Okay, and that's it. Okay, we have set this particular property, server.port 8081. Right. Let's try running our application again and see if this thing works. Yes, this worked, right? And if you notice one thing, that over here we are seeing that Tomcat started on port number 8081. Okay, over here, right, in the second last line, right? Port number 8081, which means that we were able to successfully move to a different port, right? Now if I set it to some other port, let's say 8085, let's say. Now let's try and run the application. Okay, over here if you see, now it started on port number 8085. Right. I hope this is clear to everyone. So what we saw is a port binding error, and how we resolved it by changing our port. Okay. Any doubts in this before moving to exercise number 2? Any doubts in this, anyone?
Hello?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was just saying that doesn't it change the port number by default? Because like I come from Next.js background, it does change, like if a port is busy, so it does change the port number by default. Doesn't it happen in like Spring Boot and all things?
This doesn't happen in Spring Boot.
But like if you're like working on a lot of applications, so we have to keep in mind like that this port we are using in this application and all things, right?
Generally, Java is deployed on a single machine. Your Java service will be deployed on an independent machine. Okay? So one machine will generally have a single Java instance of it, and that's why this option does not come. This problem doesn't. While talking about Next.js, okay, or some other languages, right, those have smaller processes. Okay, Next.js itself is you can have very lightweight processes running, right? On a single machine you can have multiple processes which are running, and that's why this kind of thing is needed in Next.js. But Java itself is a very resource heavy. Your Java service will be deployed on a. So what we saw is a port
is a lot of applications, so we have to keep in mind like that this port we are using in this application and all things, right? So by
the third one successfully started on port number 8081. Okay, over here, right, in the second, right. Okay, and see if this. thing works. That over here, we are seeing that Tomcat started on port number 8081. Okay, over here, right, in the second last line, right. Port number 8081, which means that we were able to successfully move to a different port, right. Now if I set it to some other port, let's say 8085, let's say. Now let's try and run the application. Okay, over here you see, now it started on port number 8085. Right. I hope this is clear to everyone. So what we saw is a port binding error, and how we resolved it by changing our port. Okay. Any doubts in this before moving to exercise number 2? Any doubts in this, anyone?
Hello.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, isn't this port?
You can have very lightweight processes running, right? On a single machine, you can have multiple processes which are running, and that's why this kind of thing is needed in SJS. But Java itself is a very resource heavy service, resource heavy process. So that's why. I hope you get that.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
Fully. Cool. So let's move on to exercise number 2. Right. Now in this exercise number 2, we are having the same project structure. We are going to go ahead with the same project structure in all these 4 exercises. Right. It's the same entity, same controller, same repository, same services. Right. Okay, everything same. Right. So let's do the same thing that we did in the first exercise first. Okay. So let's make it server.port equals to 8081. Okay, and now I'll be able to run my application. Let's verify that and see if there is any issue or if I'm able to run. Okay, so yes, I was able to run, right? So only try calling certain API. Okay, let's try calling this courses /get courses API. Okay, and see if this is working or not. Okay, what is this /courses API? Well, this one /courses, right? Okay, let me open another terminal. Now, since this is a get call, okay, do I need to mention any kind of option, any other options over here? Well, not really, right? I can just say curl, and then I can write the endpoint that I want to call. The endpoint in this case is my localhost, right? Something like this. Okay, so let's try that out. http://localhost. Okay, why localhost? Because my application, this Java application is running on port localhost itself. Right. What should be the port that I should mention over here? Well, it should be the same as this one, 8081. Right. So let's try to let's write the same thing, 8081. Okay. Now I want to call this particular API, this particular method I want to include. Then what should I include in my path? Courses, right? /courses, right? So localhost 8081/courses, right? Now I hope this makes sense to everyone that this kind of API, if I hit this, it should be redirected to this kind of mapping. And why this kind of mapping? Because see, this is a get call. By default, all curls are get call. And what's the path? /courses, right? So where is that mapping? Here is this mapping. So this particular API, when I hit this, it should come. The control should come over. Here. Hey. I hope this makes sense. Okay. So let's try it out and see if this is working. Well, this gave me some kind of error, right? Ideally, I know that there are no courses in the
Can you please scroll it a little bit up, like the code part?
code part.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to see over here?
Okay. It should be auto guide, I guess.
Correct. Exactly. Right. Okay, let's move slowly. You have the right.